In the heart of a world torn apart by war and hatred, in a small secret annex in Amsterdam, a young lady penned words that would echo throughout time, capturing the essence of a wisdom far beyond her years. And today, in this first episode, we journey into the past, into the life of Anne Frank, a beacon of innocence and insight into a time of darkness, and ask some poignant questions that might inspire us all. Welcome to the Wow Level Life podcast. It was the year 1942. The world was in turmoil. But for Anne Frank, a young Jewish girl just 13 years old, life was about to take a turn into the pages of history. Forced into hiding to escape the clutches of the Nazis, Anne and her family found refuge in the concealed rooms behind her father's office building. It was here, in this cramped little annex, the outside world ceased to exist. And yet, it was in this confinement that Anne's world truly expanded. In the solitude of her hiding, Anne turned to her diary. It was a gift for her 13th birthday. And with each entry, she poured out her heart, her soul, her fears, her hopes, her unwavering belief in the goodness of people, even in the darkest of circumstances. Anne wrote these words: "In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart." Gosh, such profound faith from one so young in a world that was literally falling apart around her. Through Anne's words, we see a world observed through the innocent yet piercing gaze of childhood. Anne didn't just write about the daily trials of life in hiding, the scarcity of food, the constant fear, the longing for freedom. She wrote about the blossoming of her own self, her thoughts on life and love, and her dreams for the future. And in this little tiny constricted space of the annex, Anne's mind wandered and wandered free, pondering the complexities of human nature. And it's through Anne's eyes that we see the wisdom of a child's perspective. She observed how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Think about those words written in her diary at 13 years old. How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. In these simple words, Anne challenges us. I don't know about you, but she certainly challenges me. Her youth was not a time of ignorance, but a period of profound understanding and hope. And despite the shadows that loomed over her life, Anne's spirit remained unbroken. Her diary entries, which are just it's a tapestry of youthful wisdom. It speaks of a world beyond war. Anne Frank, a symbol of lost innocence, became a voice for millions silenced by hate. And as we reflect on her story, we find ourselves facing the timeless questions of morality, humanity, and the enduring strength of hope. But Anne's story is not just a tale of the past. It is a perpetual reminder of the wisdom that can be found in the hearts and minds of the young, and the impact that one voice can have on the entire world. As we delve into this simple story, one of history's often forgotten narratives, I want us to carry with us the wisdom of Anne Frank, a young girl who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. And as we reflect on this story and ask some very introspective questions, not much different than the ones that she asked that were designed to ignite curiosity, I hope that we can inspire some curiosity in you, inspire some thought, and perhaps even lead us to action. This is episode 1 of the Wow Level Life podcast, and we are diving into an interesting format on this new podcast. In a world where there is so much content, in a time where we have a tendency to go very wide, I think what we need is to go deep. And in this first episode, I just want to get curious together. What is it about the perspective of a child? The perspective of a child that allows for such profound wisdom and unfiltered observation of the world. Have you ever been around a kid? Everything seems unfiltered. That's why we end up saying things like kids say the darndest things. But how does this contrast with the way that we as adults perceive our surroundings? What if we approached our daily challenges with the same hopeful resilience that kids display? The same hopeful resilience that Anne Frank displayed in her writings? How could that change our perspective on even the simple difficulties that we face day in and day out? In what ways can the purity and simplicity of a child's viewpoint shed light on the complexities of our adult lives? How can we tap into this innocence and clarity in our own decision-making? What if we just took a moment to reflect on Anne's belief in the fundamental goodness of people, even in the darkest of times? I don't know if you're anything like me, sometimes I don't assume the goodness of people, especially in the darkest of times. Instead, those assumptions lead me to a form of cynicism where I start assuming the worst. And sometimes that's even on a good day, let alone the darkest of times. And yet kids have this courage, this optimism. And how can the courage and optimism of even a young girl in hiding inspire us to confront our fears and stand up for what is right in today's world? And what is it about Anne Frank's story that continues to resonate so powerfully across generations and cultures? And what can we learn from this enduring impact? What if we each committed to making a small change in our communities, even in our circles of friends, inspired by Anne's belief in the power of individuals to make a difference? What would those changes look like for you? What would they look like for us collectively? In what ways can we encourage and nurture the innate wisdom and insight of the children in our lives? And how can we ensure that these incredibly valuable perspectives are heard and valued and amplified so that as many people as possible can experience them? What if we began to document our own journey, just like Anne did, with honesty, with introspection? How might that practice of curiosity help us to understand ourselves and the world around us more deeply? And what can Anne's legacy teach us about the power of hope, the resilience of the human spirit, this enduring wisdom that can be found even in the youngest among us? As we think about these questions, I want you to take a moment and reflect on the profound insights that can emerge from the most unlikely of sources. Again, we're talking about the innocent mind of a child. So again, throughout this episode, we're just asking questions, practical, personal questions, laced with possibility. So where's your head at right now? Where's your heart at right now? Because again, here on the Wow Level Life, my goal is to take you deep, not to add to the noise of hundreds of other hour to 2 hour long episodes giving you idea after idea and tactic after tactic, but to instead take our time on these thoughts and stories. In fact, the goal is to spend the next 2 to 3 episodes on what embracing childlike wonder and mindsets can do for our growth, our impact, and relatability in our life and our work. And once we, throughout each series of a few episodes per theme, after we ask some curious questions and look at an example from human history of that theme, we will then sit down with a good friend. And next week, we're sitting down with my good friend, Brad Montague. Even if you don't already know who Brad is, you're likely familiar with his work. And he has a lot to add to this conversation around what it looks like to pay attention to the wisdom of children. Brad is a New York Times bestselling author of books for kids and former kids. He's the creator of a huge web series, Kid President. He lives just a couple hours away from me here in Tennessee with his wife and kids. They are an incredible and truly magical family. Brad can currently be seen as the host of the television special, The Kindness Project, on the Magnolia Network and Discovery Plus. As a storyteller, his inspiring stories and imaginative resources are used in classrooms around the world daily. As the creator of the award-winning hit series Kid President, which he wrote and directed and edited, It led to all kinds of crazy collaborations with the White House, the United Nations, even celebrities like Beyonce and more. As an author and an illustrator, Brad's books have captured the hearts and imaginations of people around the world. As a creative consultant, he works regularly with companies to elevate their abilities to tell stories, impact culture, inspire change. He's also a speaker who connects deeply and uniquely with every audience on every stage he finds himself on. He speaks regularly to companies, creative communities, schools, and has graced the stage at every single story conference that we have produced for the past 7 years. He and his wife, Christy, they work together at their studio here in Tennessee called the Montague Workshop. And together they're on this mission to nourish compassion and creativity, again, in the lives of both kids and former kids. Our family loves his books, Becoming Better Grown-Ups, The Circles All Around Us, The Fantastic Bureau of Imagination. All these books, these stories, they're not just magical, they serve as invitations into living a life of wonder and love. And I'm so excited about the work that he's putting into the world. And I'm so excited that he was willing to sit down with us. Again, he's an amazing friend. We have a long history together, and I can't wait to share more next week. And so after we spend an episode getting very curious, and then we spend an episode having a conversation, we will then go into yet another episode in the same series. So after next week's episode with Brad, we'll sit down further to unpack that conversation together. Remember, we don't want to skim the surface. You don't need any more content that does that. We want to go deep, which means in episode 3, I'll be joined by, well, I will just save it for a surprise. I'm very excited to say I'll be joined by a unique co-host. You are going to love her, where we turn the themes that we've been discussing and questions that we've been asking into practical action steps so that you can actually turn our wonder into wisdom so that we can actually act on that wisdom and integrate that wisdom into our daily lives. We want this podcast to make a difference in both your life and your work, but it begins with wonder, or more accurately, curiosity, which is simply our wonder being put to work, since curiosity is just wonder in action. So I want to invite you to wonder with me in this curiosity-driven episode. I want to ask, once again, just a short series of questions that you can spend this week pondering on, staying curious about. Open your mind and your heart to them. What is it about the way children view the world that allows them to offer such unique and profound insights? How does this differ from adult perceptions? How might our lives change if we approached our daily challenges with the same optimism and resilience and hope that is often found in children? Let's get curious together and let our wonder linger as we ponder that question throughout our week. I can't wait to see how this experimental podcast format unfolds or where our wonder takes us. In the meantime, I just want to finish this by saying thank you. Thank you for listening or watching and being willing to go on this journey with me. If you're on a mission to live the life that you want, filled with work that you love, so that you are consistently moving toward a story that makes you say, wow, every day, I hope that you'll join us by subscribing now. If you're watching, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're listening and you haven't subscribed yet, really go ahead and hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss a single moment of magic. And if you like what you're hearing, if you're intrigued by this new format of a podcast that we are experimenting with, I want you to go ahead and leave a review. Your willingness to take just 1 minute to leave a few words goes a long way in helping us get this new podcast off the ground. So thanks so much to those of you in advance who are willing to do that. I am so grateful. It is a huge help. And this is going to be an incredible experience because armed with each other, we are going to work to heal your wounded wonder. We will unleash your creative spirit, and together we're going to set your soul on fire. All right, that's it for this first episode. I'm your host, Harris III. I'll see you next week in our conversation with Brad Montague. In the meantime, let's live wow level lives together.